I suggest we start. We were waiting academically 15 minutes, so it's time to start our panel 4, which is about the role of science, technology, and innovation. As we've heard even yesterday at the first day of this conference, science, technology, and innovation is taken as a very important issue for considering everything which has to do with the issue and thematic of each of the COPs, not only COP29. So as we are here witnessing all these revolutionary developments in science and technology, we are usually, all of us, having talking points saying that we do need better application of all these solutions which are available to us, that we do need to think a little bit out of a box, meaning that the innovation dimension should be reinforced when it comes to all dimensions of the issues related with the climate and the outcomes which are expecting from COP as such. So from that point, starting from life sciences, everything which life sciences and biology can offer to us, coming to information and communication technologies, artificial intelligence, and all the solutions on that side, being solutions for itself or being solutions for having further advancements in life sciences are important to take into consideration when we are making action plans, when we are making the expectations regarding the objectives of COP and all other actions and the efforts related with the climate. So from that point on, we've heard also that at the core of negotiations when it comes to the COP29 is the issue of energy. So starting from the issue of energy and all the possibilities and opportunities which are offered there by technologies coming to, of course, new sources of energy, to better energy efficiency, to new applications like all this which is related with smart agriculture, with the smart transformation, with the smart transportation as such, with the smart and better disaster management is something we should be taking into account. From that point on, of course, we've got to have the right responses on how to further mobilize everything which science, technology is offering to us when it comes to designing the solutions and to designing the proposals which would be somewhere at the end of the negotiations during this long process of the COP as such conferences. So to that end, we decided to have this panel also and to have a panel of very distinguished speakers which will offer us today their insights in how and where this multifaceted climate change issue should be addressed when it comes to science, technology, and innovation. So today with us is Djoomart Otorbaev, who was Prime Minister of Kyrgyzstan from 2014 to 2015. It's Nigar Arpadarai, who is the climate change high-level champion for COP29, member of the Parliament of the Republic of Azerbaijan. Then we have Petre, who was Prime Minister of Romania in the period 1989 to 1991. Then we have Jean-Pierre Cayol, Departmental Program Coordinator for the Department of Nuclear Sciences and Applications of the International Atomic Energy Agency. So having this panel, I will suggest that we start with a kind of listening to each of you individually and your insights in what these kind of issues are offering towards a better preparation of the COP29 and towards better defining its outcomes which are related with these issues. So I suggest we start with Mr. Otorbaev.
From yesterday's debates, I understood that we should be trying to comment on two matters. First is, of course, to try to make our debate quality debate with exchange of ideas of ourselves. And second, on trying to give advice to COP29 organizers to make Azerbaijan, host country, big success in this endeavor. In that respect, I want to make some comments how to make this summit success, especially with this subject of science, technology, innovation area. Yesterday, we shortly debated a little bit of geopolitics with Mr. Hadjiyev when there was a slight exchange of how to organize the summit, having in mind West via Russia tension. But what I would like to say now is that it's absolutely important to have among participants such country as China, especially with the view of science, technology, and innovation matter. So, few numbers. Last year, China GDP enjoyed $1.3 trillion from clean economy. It became champion in solar panels, batteries, and electrical vehicles in incredibly short time. Investment in clean energy in China increased last year by 40%, reaching staggering almost $900 billion investments, which is equivalent of GDP to countries like Switzerland or Saudi Arabia. And China is our neighbor, so I consider Azerbaijan also part of Greater Central Asia. We are bordering China, and with so-called Eurasian Rail Revolution, when huge traffic going through from China to Europe through Central Asia, and soon Middle Corridor will be available for more traffic. I think that indeed China should be present in that area, absolutely clear. Last year, one of the famous Australian think tank made analysis of who is leading in high-tech industries of 21st century. They listed 43 areas, out of which in 37, China is #1 in the world. Only 6 left, but there is tendencies that they will be covering this gap quite quickly. They are outstanding in research and development. So what's happening is that China now having 97% of export solar cells to Europe. Electrical vehicles, famous story. Those who introduced sanctions just confirming the defeat. Why I mentioned China? Because of our neighbor, and well as that, yesterday also we mentioned that capacity building in Central Asia and Azerbaijan is very important. So our talents should be joining Chinese research and development agenda to work together in 21st century, to join what they do. And Chinese, indeed, they need more talents in research and development in order to make this tendency irreversible. So in Central Asia and Azerbaijan, we have very ambitious, talented, hard-working youth population. We have to work together in science, technology, innovation with China and with other parts of the world in order to really make our planet a safer place to live for now, children and grandchildren. So my kind of advice to the organizer of COP29 would be on that subject to look very in priority way to bring Chinese to the summit and to make this session very important in your discussion. Yesterday, when we brainstormed how Azerbaijan could be successful, somewhat competing with Dubai/Brazil, the only way to be competitive is to focus on quality, not quantity. And then, if we will be looking more closer to science, technology, innovation, then we could make a huge turn. I know that priority of Azerbaijan is not energy only. It's brains, it's education, science, and innovation. So I would suggest that organizers will be trying to orchestrate this way. In that way, we are going out of geopolitics. We are coming more to pragmatism, and we will make this summit a big success with green revolution happening before our eyes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, that was how we meant to participate, giving organizers a kind of our advices and suggestions how to go forward. So it's a good thing we are having Nigar here as a champion of COP29, and I'm sure she could give us her insight in the way how these issues are taken into consideration at this phase of the preparation. Nigar, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. It's such a great honor to address this distinguished assembly. Dear friends, I come here with a very simple message. Creating a world that is net zero, resilient, nature positive, and equitable by 2050 is both necessary and within our grasp. To succeed, we need more than just government actions. We need a whole of society approach that included businesses, cities, NGOs, civil society, and all the other stakeholders. And so the purpose of this forum to build collaboration across all parties to ensure successful COP29 is crucial. Climate change is one of the main disruptors which is shaping up the future, but it's not the only one. There is now a huge technological drive pushed forward by artificial intelligence. We see only the first signs of this unfolding technological revolution, but they already convince us that the world is going to change dramatically. Green agenda and artificial intelligence are naturally intertwined. This technological revolution we are facing today is very much centered on the efficiency of our economy through artificial intelligence-based designs, planning, supply chains, production, and distribution, as well as optimization and utilization of waste. Artificial intelligence will help us produce exactly what we need in the amount we need without stockpiling and throwing away. It will help us maintain our production facilities and service infrastructure in a more efficient way, which will mean that it will serve longer and more efficiently. Artificial intelligence-related technological breakthrough that is coming our way is definitely having great impact on implementation of overall climate agenda. I would even dare to claim that it makes this agenda ultimately implementable. But with this many upsides, there are downsides. Definitely, artificial intelligence is going to send shockwaves through labor market. And if monopolized by unscrupulous, by small groups of large corporations, it may lead to concentration of power and resources in small groups, leaving people and countries behind. Will it be a real contributor to climate change agenda then? No way. Therefore, apart from the obvious statement that the current artificial intelligence-driven technological revolution is the natural ally and enabler for climate change agenda, there are conditions under which this statement is truthful. It is very much about access to such technologies. Large countries and small countries, large corporations and small companies, rich individuals and poor people should have a fair opportunity to access and use such technologies. I mean technologies that amplify the abilities of companies, governments and people to contribute to climate agenda. By using them, they all work for common good. We talk a lot about financing at the moment, as the logic of climate change agenda requires it to be the center of current stage of COP development. But almost as importantly, we will have to follow this discussion with the discussion on how to organize a global system of technological development and system of access to them, which will be fair and which will contribute to global goals. Technologies are created by smart people, and these people and companies who through talent and hard work push technological progress would be rewarded in full. But we also have to remember that while respecting the rights of inventor and patent holder, we should make sure the access to such technologies is not an instrument to dominate or monopolize. Because if that happens, the climate change agenda will get seriously hurt. Under all circumstances, it must remain a global force for common good. All technologies, including disruptive modern tech, is a great chance to achieve it much faster. But we need to accept and follow some rules to make sure that all these immense opportunities are not abused by the greedy and dishonest. Now, dear Excellencies, coming back to COP29, Azerbaijan is committed to building cooperation nationally and internationally, taking forward the achievement of Dubai and working with presidencies of UAE and Brazil to ensure that 1.5 degree is kept within the reach. Learning from past experiences in international sustainability leadership, we have introduced 5 pillars of harmony for the COP29 action agenda. Just to remind you that these are the harmony between climate agenda items, climate finance, mitigation, adaptation, balance between climate ambition and climate action, harmony between SDG dimensions, economic, environmental, and social, balance between global and regional initiatives in the action agenda, harmony between humans, human capital, gender, youth, children, and nature, as well as climate action and sustainable development, NDCs and SDGs. These pillars will help to ensure that COP29 is an inclusive COP, respecting diverse national circumstances and regional contexts, and engaging all stakeholders in building ambition through the NDCs and addressing implementation gaps. Dear Excellencies, the role of the champion is pretty unique because it resonates and it's a kind of a bridge between the governments and non-state actors, non-party stakeholders, civil society, businesses, philanthropy organizations, investors, cities. All these groups are part of the COP process and their voices should also be heard. This is the reason that we are currently working with all of these groups. And doing so not only drives real world, real economy impact, but gives governments the confidence to put forward ambitious national plans for climate and nature. About my priorities as the high-level champion, the main priority will be on business engagement because the imperative for business to take action is clear. We are witnessing rapidly accelerating physical risk, but the opportunity is clear too. The net zero transition is the economic opportunity of the 21st century as sector and industries platform. For business to contribute, we need to build on work of our universities and researchers to support green innovation. This means applying emerging technologies and ideas to generate new products and processes, not only stimulating growth, but reducing sector emissions. Technologies such as artificial intelligence, digital twins, and Internet of Things. Dear ladies and gentlemen, we will have a special focus on SMEs. We are working with, obviously, large corporations and the SMEs from business community. But large companies, they do have access to technologies, to finances, to media. In case of SMEs, these are the backbones of economy, and they are the vulnerable groups because the SMEs, because of this transition, need not only to survive, but they need to flourish. This is how we put that. And if we don't make sure that the companies, businesses believe in the green transition, we will stay in the territory of pledges and promises. This is my strong belief. We need to make sure that companies are on board and they understand the importance, they understand the responsibility, and they see the business case there, they see the opportunities. So I think I will stop at this moment, and thank you very much for giving me a chance to address these issues. Thank you.
Thank you for so good presentation of, first of all, what your role of champion is, and that's very interesting, I believe, and that will offer us a further opportunity to discuss how we, from our side, could maybe be helpful in going forward with the plans you put it forward. So in that sense, we are going to the next panelist, which is Petre Roman. Petre, please, floor is yours.
Thank you. I must confess, dear friends, I'm happy to make my contribution on this panel about science. In the last 4 or 5 years, my great satisfaction came from my activity in science. So I want to speak about science. The whole global understanding about climate we have today comes from science. But don't think that the relation between the accomplishments of science, and namely I'm speaking about climate science, and acknowledging, the society acknowledging those results was smooth. I give you 2 examples. In 2021, only in 2021, there were 2 Nobel Prizes awarded. One was for 2 scientists, Manabe and Hasselmann, who discovered in 1967, 1967, the effect of accumulation of green gases. I mean, in that case, it was about carbon dioxide. So the result, 67, Nobel Prize 2021. Another example, the same year, 2021, the Nobel Prize for Physics was awarded to Giorgio Parisi. In the early 70s, 72, he already completed his work on complex systems. And he was awarded the Nobel Prize only in 2021. Such a lapse of time is speaking a lot about missing opportunities in the relation between what the science is really offering, accomplishing, and what we as a society accept as such. Earth climate is a complex system in which even basic facts, like an increment of warming, are uncertain because climate science, like science in general, is studying the complexity, and on one hand, science is deterministic when it's using the statistical analysis and then formulating statistical modeling. In that sense, is deterministic. Why? Because then they are analyzing the bulk of data, the statistics. So we have in the average plateau, there is determinism. On the other hand, it's fuzzy. It's related to uncertainties because all natural systems are complex systems, meaning they are in their intimacy, they are unpredictable. So you have signs both deterministic and fuzzy, uncertain. Let me give you an example of this contradictory aspect. The Caspian Sea. In the last decades, probably no more than 4 decades, the level of the Caspian Sea diminished by 2 meters and continues to diminish. And the Caspian Sea is not very profound. At most, it's about 100 meters. And that is why, because the main contributor is the river Volga, and the river Volga is, the discharge of the river Volga is has also diminished. And then again, why? Because there is less snow in the Volga basin. Then again, why? And then we are in uncertainty about why. Normally, we should think that it is about the global warming, but we are not sure about that. But on the other hand, we are today, this month, the scientists are under a really grave strain, tension. In December, January, last and this year, the Antarctic ice cap was at its lowest level ever because of melting in summer. And the great question is this event a singularity, just a singular moment, or is it a pattern? Because if it is a pattern, we are really, I wanted to use a tough word, we are really in bad shape, because the mass of the ice cap of the Antarctica is enormous. And if the melting is a pattern, we can see the level of the oceans rising, not just millimeters, but could be meters. That's the reality of the unpredictability, the reality of the complex system we are facing with. That's what science is producing every day. And not enough, far from enough, we are taking care, we are account about these realities. The extreme events, I told you, the average statistics is showing are deterministic. They show a pattern. The pattern is the warming of the planet. This is a fact. But in the meantime, we cannot predict the extreme events. And even more than that, in the same place, we can have the worst heat wave, and just 3 years later, rain waves. It happened in China, in the Yangtze River. It was in 2021, a huge rain wave, floods, enormous floods, never seen, probably 1 in 1,000 years, and 3 years later, a heat wave, a drought of incredible proportions. The same place. So, maybe we are capable at some point to speak frankly, to acknowledge frankly, sincerely, about these results of of science. I hope so. Because the warming of the planet, the trend of the warming of the planet, as I told you several times, is maybe the dynamics of this warming is maybe accelerating. We are not sure about that. But we are sure that the process is increasing in its dynamics. And the great interrogation about that is, what if we are approaching a critical threshold? In my long time ago, my activity as a scientist, hydrologist, it was on the Danube River. I'm telling you this story because it's a good example and significant for what I'm telling you now. Then I will stop. We started, I was leading a research. It was a complex team with biologists, chemists, and so on, investigating it was a research on the water quality of the Danube River. The Danube River is washing and inside Romania for 1,070 kilometers. 1,070 kilometers. And I distributed several sections. It was dozens of sections, and each section is dozens of sampling, taking samples from the river and then measuring the quality. It was in 1975 we started. And very soon it was a great surprise. 76% of the samples has shown that the quality of the river was not only very good, it was drinkable water. We saw people taking water from the river and drinking it. But we were thinking they are crazy. No, they knew better. But 10 years later, when this research was unfortunately stopped by then the wife of the dictator, the quality of the river, from 76% samples drinkable water, fall to 33% in 10 years. What happened in between? We had to conclude that at some point we reached a critical threshold. The Danube River, a big natural body, couldn't fight anymore the pollution. At the time, nor Vienna, Budapest, Belgrade, Bratislava didn't have epuration cleaning plants of the water discharges. And beyond that critical point, critical threshold, the quality declined sharply. And this is an example of nature. And there are many other examples. So, this could seem a pessimistic view, which is not, it's just science. But in the meantime, I can be and I want to be optimistic in that sense that we humans and humanity, with the help of science, we are capable to cope with change. And what we are doing, for instance, with COP29, it's precisely that, to cope with inevitable change. Thank you.
So I wouldn't say you were pessimistic, you were cautious, as scientists are always, the real scientists, very cautious on whatever they are doing and advocating. Our next panelist is Jean-Pierre Cayol, and I'll ask you to have a floor, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Excellencies. I've been spending the past day readjusting my notes based on the very interesting discussions and questions that have been asked or said in the different panels, and I think I should have had time to revise my notes after our colleagues here. I've been reflecting on climate change, on how the world approached climate change since the first COP, and basically the understanding has changed. We were, at the beginning of the COP, or in the 70s, we were looking at climate change as a potential threat in a distant future. It became slowly but surely a reality. People have been debating how many degrees and when it was going to happen. Today, we are in a situation where we know it's happening. People may still question the source of climate change, but nobody can deny that we see the impact already every single day. So when we look at science, we had the phases of modeling, so scientists giving data, having models on when it's going to happen, how much it's going to happen, and so on and so forth, into looking for identifying solution for mitigations. How can we combat? How can we stop? How can we slow down climate change? And that's very much mitigation. But today, when I look at the title of the meeting today, Sustainable and Resilient Future, if we want a sustainable and resilient future, we need to ensure we have a present. And the present is facing the already impact of climate change, and this is adaptation, and this is mainly what I'm going to talk about. Looking along the history of COP, there was science has always been behind, as I said, but basically the use of science for me has been the use of science for information, so informing decision makers, informing models, providing data. And it's very important because we have data, we have information on the impact on human, we've raised public awareness, and we develop some technological innovations, but always, or most of the time, with the idea of influencing policy and legislation, among others. We heard earlier today also that science has not always been well received. We know the debate about developing countries versus developed countries, who's responsible. We heard yesterday about the impact on small island states, the impact today on small island states. We heard about access to infrastructure, to funding, the lack of skilled humans, regulatory, institutional barriers, so all of this. Now moving to specifically here, nuclear science and technology, we need to have, I strongly believe we need to have technologies, and we have technologies now, we'll talk about it in a few minutes, that are available today to help the population in need. And I think the message I'm trying to pass here, and I will come back in my conclusion, is I strongly believe we have to move away from science for information to science for action. So we need concrete use of science. Now, you said it when you introduced me, I'm here representing the International Atomic Energy Agency, and I'm sure that if I would go around the table here, I would have at least 80% of the people present who will say, okay, he's going to talk about nuclear power, and then he's going to give back the floor to Madam Chair, which I will do. I promise you I will give you the floor back, but I will talk about something else than nuclear power. But I have to talk about nuclear power because everybody's expecting it. We heard yesterday also that we like to share numbers, so I have a few numbers here. Obviously, nuclear power has made a significant contribution, or is making significant contribution to climate change. And some data here, the use of nuclear power has avoided to date the equivalent of around 70 gigatons of carbon dioxide emissions over the last half century only. The increasing worldwide recognition of the role of nuclear energy in meeting the climate target is unprecedented and is reflected on the first global stockade. Here, I just would like to pause for a second. Our Director General, Rafael Mariano Grossi, took over in December 2019, and the first meeting he attended, he told us, he said, we have to stop preaching the already converted, and the first meeting he attended was COP. And the first time he went to COP, people look at him and say, what are you doing here? You're nuclear power. Why are you there? And today, the situation has changed. 31 countries worldwide operate nuclear power plants. We have among the, and they represent 25% of the world low carbon electricity. Among the 198 parties to the Global Stockholm Convention, we have more than 20 countries that include nuclear energy in their long-term strategies. And these countries account for around 3/4 of global energy emission. So here I am. I talk about nuclear power. Everybody is there expecting me, but nuclear is not only that, and the IAEA is not only that. Nuclear science and applications, they have a critical role in adaptation and in supporting the achievement of the SDGs. We work in areas such as human health, food production, water management, environmental protection, and industrial development. So I'm only going to give a few examples today that are relevant to what we talk about here, climate change. In food and agriculture, and I know there is a session following that, nuclear science and technology contribute to the development of climate-smart agricultural practices. You mentioned that, Madam Chair, including innovative soil, nutrient, and water management packages. We have nuclear techniques such as mutation breeding that are used to develop improved drought and heat-tolerant crop varieties. We have techniques that are used to enhance genetic resistance in crops to transboundary plant diseases. We have nuclear techniques that are used to control insect pests and diseases. We heard the DG of WHO yesterday saying there is, of course, a direct impact of climate change on the distribution of pests, insect pests, but also transboundary zoonotic diseases. COVID was one example. We work on sustainable water resource management. Isotopic hydrology is one of the techniques that is used to understand the water cycle from the precipitation to surface water and groundwater, and beyond that, we can provide data on the age, availability, quality of the water for the ministers to decide on how to use their scarce water resources. My colleague specialists say there is enough water for everybody. It's just not distributed evenly, and you need to be able to find them. We also work, we have laboratories in Monaco, we also work on blue carbon sequestration in mangrove. We work on ocean acidification. This is one of the impacts that is not so well known of climate change and will impact millions of people in the planet that are relying on seafood as the only source of animal protein. So we have technologies in all of this. We work on assessing the consequence of climate change on coastal environment, marine ecosystems. We very often, I used to say, we don't have the technologies that can find all the solutions, but very often we are what I call mission critical. We bring the technology where and when it's needed. I'm not here to give you a lecture of how the agency functions, but just a few words. We have 12 laboratories being in Vienna or outside Vienna, in Monaco, working on different things. We don't have laboratories for the sake of doing science. We have laboratories to respond to the needs of member states. We currently have 54 centers in different countries that are at our disposal as IAEA, given by member states to work on critical aspects of science. And you will not be surprised to know that the demand from our member states is primarily for about 30% of the demand on food and agriculture, followed more or less by human health in the same proportion. And you will be quite surprised to realize that the demand we got on environment, let's say climate change in general, is 5%. And why so? Is because when we discuss with our member states, they see climate change as an issue, a political thing. But what they effectively, when they ask for support on health, support on food and agriculture, because this is what they are facing. For them, climate change is not a discussion. Climate change has an immediate impact today on food and agriculture, on health, on water resources. This is why when they request assistance, they don't request assistance on climate change or environment. They request assistance on very concrete aspects. We have at any point in time about 1,000 scientists, which are not IAEA staff, that are working with us on this subject. So what do? We identify the problem, we listen to member states, we go there, we develop the research, we develop the technology, and then we transfer the technology. What is needed, and I will go back to that in the conclusion, what is needed is scaling up. Is scaling up the acceptability of the technology, So not only one farmer is going to get the seed of rice that is tolerant to salty water, but the region, all the farmers will have access to it. And for that, we need some support, and I will come back to that. So we had yesterday in one of the panel, that was one of the questions, how do we work together? I think the time when the scientists, when the isotope hydrologists were in their lab not talking to the agriculture specialist is over. We don't have the luxury to do that. So in science, we need to work across silos, which means in ministries, we need to work across silos, which means in the UN, we need to work across silos. And we do exactly that. I know that we have FAO, we had FAO and WHO in the room. We do work with FAO, we do develop projects together. We have one project that was launched by our two Director Generals a few months ago. It's called Atoms for Food, that is looking exactly at food security in the context of climate change. We work with WHO on transboundary diseases, on zoonotic diseases such as COVID. We work with UNEP on the regional seas, on assessing ocean acidification and so on and so forth. We do the same at country level. We have the luxury, because we are the IAEA, because everybody expects us to talk about nuclear power, that everybody expects us to only talk to the Minister of Energy or the Minister of Foreign Affairs. But because of those aspects, we do talk to the Minister of Agriculture, to the Minister of Health, of Environment, of Water. And we do the same all the way down to the users. We go and see the farmers, we go and see the patients for health, and so on and so forth. We heard a lot about money yesterday. We invest about 100 million euros per year into about 140 countries. We have a membership of about 178 today. It's a drop in the ocean. It was 100 million, but we do not sign a check and send the money to the country. The money that I mentioned here, the amount I mentioned here, we invest in people. We train people. We train people from the countries. We train the people who are going to use the techniques, to use them safely and securely. We're talking about nuclear applications here. We invest in equipment, so we transfer the technology when it's needed. And talking about funding, something that is sad somehow is very often when you look at the country level, when you look at a given region in a country, developing agriculture, climate-smart agriculture, or water network, we don't need a huge amount of money. What is happening when you knock at the door of donors and you come with a project that is less than a few 100 million euros, you lose credibility somehow. We face a situation where, like, if either you go big or you don't come. And this is one of the issues. We don't need money for the International Atomic Energy Agency. We need money for the countries. We have the technology, we just need to scale up. So, wrapping up, like my colleagues, I thought about what is the message we can pass to our colleagues and host this beautiful country, that is Azerbaijan, for COP29. I've said it already. I strongly believe we need science for climate action. Let's not, we continue looking for solution informing decision makers, but we need science for climate action. As I mentioned already, while we work on mitigation funding solutions for the future, we need to address adaptation now for the populations in need. We need to find the technical solutions for the farmers, for the water specialists on the ground. We need to scale up. And I strongly believe we need the private sector on board. We need the private sector to be interested in the technology. And I'm not talking about this big multinational, local private sector to invest in the country for sustainable resources. I had a discussion with one of the colleagues yesterday. I'm a strong believer that we also have to change the way we talk. I believe that talking about populations in needs is not sufficient. I would even say that talking to the population in needs is also not good, because when you talk to somebody, you expect the person to sit and listen. We have to talk with the population in needs. They do have, as a UN and as a group, of countries, very often the people have the solutions. I had the luxury in my career to live 2 years in the Sahara and two years in the Amazon. And with all the science, with all the technologies, with the GPS, with the computers, with everything, I would not be here talking to you today on several occasions if I wouldn't have had the knowledge of the population on site that know how to survive in the Sahara, that know how to survive in the Amazon. So, along the same concept. In summary, the IAEA has the World Forum on Nuclear Field and equipped with a lot of scientists, we stand ready to support science, transdisciplinary science, and work with any groups that exist that want to tackle the solutions on the ground. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much to all the panelists, and I would say that, of course, out of everything we heard, it's quite clear that when we are talking about science, innovation, and technology, we are talking about the means to further enhance what is climate resilience at the first place, how to go forward with optimizing resources and the use of resources, and of course, how in general to foster sustainable development, taking into account all aspects, taking into account environmental, societal, economic aspects, and also having in mind while doing this all the challenges which are very specific for the less developed countries. So the main response from this panel and all of us who are engaged in science, technology, innovation is how to further and effectively mobilize science and its outcomes towards the objectives and the goals of the COP. Of course, there is a number of ideas which are put forward, starting from the fostered and strengthened international cooperation towards what is more interdisciplinarity in research on this issue when it comes to climate science, and it's interlinked with technologies, and technologies in this, I would say, two-faced dimensions, starting from the benefits and having into account all the harms which might be done while using them, then towards better investments and higher investments in research and development, towards the need of policy support, better education at all costs, which is necessary when it comes to this issue, and which is necessary when it comes also to public engagement, as we are all witnessing the situations where actually all these climate challenges and efforts which are done towards better resilience of the planet and each of the countries are very often a matter of disinformation as well. We are having that not only when it comes to those other sectors, but in the last 10 years, disinformation is something which is also present in all aspects of science, and I'm not sure that we are taking that into account quite seriously. So in that sense, before giving the floor to our panelists to give their concluding words, I would like to ask all other participants on whether they are willing to engage and give their insights on this interesting issue. Of course, it's Ismail.
I will start with a very sad note. The news showed that about 900 people died in the Hajj this year, of which 600 were Egyptians. And that is due to heat stroke because the temperatures in the passageway to Mina passed over 50 degrees. We do know, and we do estimate that now we already have manifestations of that. Both Pakistan and even New Delhi, as the capital of India, had over 52 degrees recorded a few weeks ago. And so these heat waves that may cause forest fires in Canada and so on are going to be devastating in the dry areas generally. And the predictions of the models, and that's the best that we can do in understanding and utilizing the data we have in science, is that these areas are going to have 100 days or more per year of 50 degrees. Now, the human body is not equipped to handle that. And as we saw just the sad event I'm reporting on, 900 people died during the Hajj. Therefore, I think that the issue of climate change is really a matter of life and death. It is no longer something that's coming way in the future that we have to worry about only in 2030 and 2050. I mean, it's here now. People are dying. And that is a good reminder that we can do and we have to do more. Now, we can do a lot more. Science is advancing at an incredibly fast pace. Thank you. At an incredibly fast pace, and specifically the biological sciences. And too frequently, I mean, the focus has always been much more attached to the IT and artificial intelligence and communications, ICT, not sufficiently on what's happening on biology. But things happening in biology are amazing. We have been able in the last few years, for example, to map your hard drive data into a DNA of a single bacterium, allow it to multiply for 3 generations, and then retrieve the data again. Why is that important? Well, in that case, you could store the entire data on the planet in 1 kilogram. Why? Because DNA is just incredibly efficient. It's incredible to think about it. If you can't even see a single cell without a microscope, then you have at the nucleus of the cell, then inside the nucleus of the cell, you have this wound-up DNA. If you were to take it out and stretch it out, it would be about 1.8 meters long for a human cell, but it's only 2 nanometers wide, which means that a human hair is 50,000 times wider than the DNA. And if you were to take all the cells in one person and stretch them out, they would be twice the size of the diameter of the solar system, one person. And all of that multiplies, again, divides and multiplies almost every 20 minutes without errors. And when we have errors, we have tumors and so on, but normally. So the biological processes are much, much more powerful than anything we've been able to do yet in the mechanical world and the ICT. And I think that the mergers of these things are going to be even more powerful. AI, when applied to designing the 3-dimensional structure of proteins, was able to do 200 million molecules, entire proteome of all known creatures, in less than 1 year. It would take an average PhD student 2 to 3 years to do 1 molecule. So the speed at which this is going to change is enormous. I think here the big problem for us is going to be how quickly we can move towards harnessing the new breakthroughs that are going on everywhere to the kinds of problems that we have. And that will require us to think in terms of agroecological zones, on one thing, because their problems are very different. And then secondly, to think also in terms of something which the public doesn't think of, but people who are involved in science do, is that you don't just have basic science and applied science. In fact, you have four steps. You have the basic science, and then you have strategic science, and then you have applied science, and then you have adaptive science. For example, the discovery of genome editing, that's basic science, for which Jennifer Doudna and Manuel Charpentier won the Nobel Prize 2 years ago. Then, when you come, before you jump to applying it, you need strategic science who says, okay, we're going to do this for plants. What is it that we want? What kind of traits do we want? Where the genes are? Well, we want salt tolerance, drought tolerance, deeper roots, better yields, higher nutrition, etc. So these are, you structure that and you have a strategy. And then the applied science is to develop these cultivars. But then that's not enough, because the cultivars have to be crossed with the local varieties that exist and function in different areas. And that's why you have to have a partnership all the way from the research labs in the most advanced institutions towards, for example, in the case of the CGIAR, the international agricultural centers who do the strategic and applied, and then the applied and adaptive is done by the local research institutions, specifically in the countries that are most at risk, specifically in the poorest countries where that help is going to be needed. So I think that the recognition that the problems are already here. 900 people died, as we are told, in the 3 days of the Hajj. And stark reminder, 600 Egyptians among them, stark reminder that we need to accelerate that collaboration and cooperation. This is not the private sector. These are the national institutions that do research for the public good, not just for selling things. We can maximize that later on and look at seed companies and the role that they can play. But fundamentally, that research work has to be undertaken by those who are knowledgeable about what the needs are, focused on the strategic side, and then collaborate with the local institutions and strengthen the local institutions in the process. With that, I think we can do a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Ismail. I have Jean.
Thank you very much. In the spirit of science for climate action, I want to pivot a little bit and be a little bit more practical. Questions on COP29. And Nigar, I think this is probably your lane to respond to. The energy vertical will be really critical, R&D, in terms of reducing emissions, in terms of how we increase financing. Financing what, right? So the question I have for you, as you look at the energy subcommittee, are you breaking down the supply chain for renewables and what that looks like, all the way from production, solar, wind, nuclear, geothermal, to transmission, cables, to pipeline storage, et cetera, with storage being a really key issue. Because it's batteries, it's hydrogen, green hydrogen can be a battery, it's salt caverns, it's aquifers. So this is a really practical question and gets to the heart of the transition from oil and gas to renewables as to what you're doing on that energy committee and how we can help that, because there are a number of people here that know that R&D space, what that looks like, particularly storage. And it also plays into your SMEs, because some of the manufacturing that needs to be done, we're trying to look at manufacturing hubs all over the world, especially in small to medium locations, where they could ramp up manufacturing and take this from R&D, like on electrolyzers, to production. So it's a very practical question, turning the science to the reality of changing the energy production. And I think, Nigar, that's probably, what is COP29 going to do on that, and how can we help?
Sure, I'll give the word afterwards. Thank you, Jean. So we are having Maimouna.
Thank you very much, the moderator, and also to all the speakers. When you talk about the role of science, technology, and innovations, just crossed my mind, this science, technology, innovation for whom? Because there are also science, technology, and innovation for what purpose? And for me, is for whom, for what purpose, and to me, is for the betterment of humanity. Because there are also science, technology, and innovation for the other purpose, because back to the humanity. And when we talk about the science and technology, and I totally agree with Unica that it should be the people approach. It should be community, whole of society approach. Now I think there are a lot of intention or plan for the, what you call it, smart cities, to tackle the smart solution to tackle the climate change. But I believe in people-centered smart cities. And the needs of the people is very important in order when we talk about technology and innovation, not vendor-driven. Because I think once it's vendor-driven, I think that is a lot of challenges in terms of the implementation, understanding, maintenance, and also the impact to the people. And when you talk about the role of the science, technology, innovation, I would like to take one example on waste management. Waste management for all the many cities, generally, they use around 40% of their city budget on waste management. And then how much left when you talk about to tackle the climate change, if it's 40% of the budget is on waste management. And this, when you talk about the waste management, I would like to go back to the terminology of circular economy. When you talk about circular economy, we need to rethink through the science, technology, and innovation, the process of production. We need to rethink how to reduce the waste. When we talk about the zero waste, to manage the waste is already there. So we need to look into the processing, to the R&D, the supply chain, the production, the packaging, the transportation, so that all these have to look into how can we reduce the carbon emission and reduce and link to the climate change. And one of the things that I would like to put forward is very important, behavioral change. I think that the climate change starts with us as an individual. How we consume, how we behave. Even when I sometimes I walk into the restaurant in the hotel, maybe for the breakfast. Sometimes I look a lot of food still left on the table. Where are these foods go? They will go to the if they have the, of course, Baku, they have the good waste management. But this is cause also methane gas. So I think this behavioral change is very important. And how can we look into the behavioral change? We have to link into looking into the whole cycle, education. Education is very, very important. How can we bring this to translate the climate change, the jargon, into the what maybe Nigar mentioned about the SME, into the student on the ground, meaning that how can we make climate change made simple in terms of understanding, in terms of to bringing back. Because when I was in Japan, I asked the mayor of Kawasaki, how can that, and mayor of Yokohama, how can that you get so clean? And I can't even get to have to look for a rubbish bin on the street. You have to keep your rubbish in your pocket. And they said to get to that, they use I think they took around 40 years. I said 40 years. I'm already at that time 40 years old. I said I don't see any changes in my city for the next 80 years. He said no, because through the education, when you start with the kindergarten, and then when they grow up, this become a habit to them. You don't have to tell them, it's a habit. It's a norm to them not to say. So we need education to have this in terms of cleanliness, and how is it linked to climate change? Is also linked very, very direct to floods. When you don't have a very good waste management, it will clog your drain, clog your waterways, and it become floodings. You can see it recently in Nairobi and in Pakistan. So these are the areas that we have to really look into the policy, which is bottom up, top bottom, and also convergence of ideas when it's whole of a society approach just now. I think this is very important also to look at the policy that is vertical integration and horizontal integration. What I meant is that you have the policy, but you need to translate it into the community, into the youth, into the women and girls, and the people with disability, for them to understand. And I'm very, very, very attracted to our presenter said just now, science not only for the information, but science for action. I I think this is very, very good, outcomes of the terminology that we can get from what is today. So for this, we also need, in order to talk about the science, technology, and innovation, we also really need the leadership. The leadership in every level. So I think this is very important in terms of the capacity building. When go back to science, technology, innovation, but capacity building to implement the science, to understand the facts and figures, the technology created, and also the innovation. So this is also important in order to see that what we gathers or the plan or put in the strategy from the facts, from the science and technology innovation for everybody. It's not only for specific. So science for whom and for what? That is very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Now I'll give a word to Jan Fischer.
I am aware of the fact that our time is running out, and I wouldn't like to shorten the time for coffee break. But one question and one comment then. The question is for all panelists. How do you see the relations between science and scientists, or scientific community, university, academic environment, and policymakers and politicians? That's the important point of this incoming COP29 summit. It will be, at the end of the day, the purely political decision anyway, on the global level. But hopefully based on the knowledge, on the findings of the science, of the inputs which politicians are absorbing from science. And are they in position to absorb it in proper way? I know that they have to weigh the, let's say, impact, financial costs, political costs, and I don't know what. But the question is, how do you see the relationships, and what are the ways of the enhancing, improving them, and how to improve the ways of communication between science and politics and policymakers? And one comment, which was very impressive for me, was the intervention of my dear colleague Petre Roman. This was for me as a lifetime statistician and economic analyst. What he said and what he presented, it was the brilliant, excellent highlighting of the current state of determinism methodologically. That was the relationships between statistics, modeling, probability, uncertainty, which accompanies us every day, and let's say finalizing this with the, could be said, some kind of cautiousness with the interpretation of the scientific outputs, scientific results. So it was the excellent and very concise guided tour through modern determinism and methodology of science. Thank you very much. Highly appreciated, Petre. So the question is on the table, and if you want, I would be very pleased to listen to your replies. Thanks.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you very much. That's actually the right question. I fully endorse that question, since being in having both tracks, science and politics, for decades now. I can witness the fact that very often, if not always, you are in a position as you are speaking with two completely different worlds without understanding each other at all. So that's something which would be very helpful to have a kind of thematic discussion and to maybe produce some guidelines how we will communicate between ourselves. So the floor is to you, Ismail.
Thank you very much, Milica. I have two comments. One of them coming from Dr. Roman on the uncertainty of science. And as scientists, we all know it. I mean, we discover things. And as we discover, we can refute things that we said it's true 5 years ago, 6 years ago. But I think really that uncertainty of science, many people cannot take it. And that feeds into science policy interface that you mentioned, Jan. Science policy interface, and I'm surprised, sincerely, in NGIC to see so many of you that are prime ministers, and former prime ministers, former president, and you are scientists. So remember your time when you were in government. Did you make more investment in science or not? Did you push for it or not? I would be surprised. I want to know, how did you deal with it yourself when you were in that seat? And that takes me to international cooperation. What we need right now, and I agree with you, Ismail, we are at our best time to innovate, but we don't have enough international cooperation. The Prime Minister of Kyrgyzstan mentioned China. China investment in agriculture, public research, is the highest now in the world for the last 5 years. They are beyond $10 billion per year in public agricultural research. The next one that comes, it's India, with about $5 billion. So China has surpassed the US in public research. So, and it shows, you look at the numbers, and Brazil is number 3. So the BRICS countries are coming up, and other countries. But we don't have international cooperation. Most of the time we have much more blocks to stop international cooperation than to push for international cooperation. And many of it, it's about, again, it's about nation interest that was mentioned yesterday by Walter. It's either the national interest, it's the corporate interest, it's the trade barriers, and so on and so forth. So how could we really push, given that it's the best time to innovate, how could we push for better cooperation, bringing everybody together, not saying China science, it's not good, and the other science is better, and those judgments that we need maybe to overcome.
Thank you very much. We are out of time, so I would like to ask you all in the suit to be as brief as possible, please. So, Csaba.
Yesterday we touched upon the issue that geopolitical competition, the deepening geopolitical competition, is a very strong headwind for achieving success at COP29. What we can nevertheless agree upon, that the common language on the big issues, including how to concentrate resources, is the scientific evidence. So if there is a real difficulty to make decisions at the end of the day, there is always one last resort where we can go back, is what is the scientific evidence on the given issue. Solutions, what we might find, will be compromises. But there might be compromises that politically looks nicely, but has nothing to do with the real solution in the real world. So therefore my plea to all of us, to all of you, all negotiators, that compromises should be built on scientific evidence, should represent solutions that work economically, and that would make sense in terms of what are we financing for. My second very small observation, what Ismail also mentioned and some others, we basically are dealing with big data management when we are talking about the science of climate and all the extremities which is coming ahead of us. Within that big data management, my advice, suggestion to ourselves would be in two ways. On short term, we need a project that is a kind of
early warning for all. It is already an existing project, but the implementation is very, very slow. It means that within 1 week, 2 weeks, we can identify the leader challenges to communities, countries, individuals that is threatening due to meteorological, water, and environmental determined conditions. But there's another one, what we still don't talk enough or sharp enough. Conditions due to the climate change are changing very rapidly. And we do not really know what will be the life-threatening conditions, mostly through water, within 5 years or 10 years' time. Though it is very important to determine what to finance, how to finance, what to invest, and what to develop. Maybe the agriculture, what we are developing today, will not be suitable for tomorrow in 5 years' time and 10 years' time. So we definitely need a scientific project. I would call it a global water information system. It's a big data management on the big data of water. And last but not least, it's only one sentence. Yes, I'm fully aware and very, very much behind harnessing the artificial intelligence. And I'm fully aware that it is going to revolutionize most of our activities. But let's be quite frank. Artificial intelligence has reached a point what we still don't discuss and don't acknowledge. It has reached the point of evolvability. It's the biological evolution, what Ismail has mentioned, is observable in the case of artificial intelligence. It is changing without our intervention. It deserves a very, very deep understanding. It's a lethal threat, existential threat to humanity. Our regulations do not address this question at all. So sooner or later, maybe not at COP, maybe at Nizami Ganjawi, we have to come back to this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Abba. Hakima, are you still?
Thank you so much, and thank you for our speakers. I will just react. Our president said that 900 persons died in Mecca today. Very sad news indeed. But let me just explain. I'm coming from Morocco, and since I was young in school, and during my studies and my PhDs, I was taught that Morocco is a very, very dry country. And with the IPCC, we have the report each year showing the modeling of the water in Morocco, etc. And imagine what? Every day when a leader, even a scientific leader, is talking about the situation of water in Morocco, is saying, we are experiencing a drought. We know. And we know that it will be worse in few years. But this will not change his policy, and he's still deciding to build hydroelectricity, dams, etc. So I think that the main issue here is not science. Science is evolving without us. We have many institutions working on modeling. Artificial intelligence is evolving and doing extraordinary things, even in health, etc. But I think that the main issue is to connect our policies with the science, is to connect our universities and researchers with our politicians. There is no connection. I'm talking for the MENA region and Africa, because this is the region I know the best. There is no connection between our researchers, inventors, our policies and politicians. So it's to build the bridges between the universities, the policies, and the business. How do you want us, I'm talking for all MENA region and Africa, we will not move if we are not connecting innovation with the politic and with the business. So I think that there is this issue, and maybe we can work on promoting science-based decision makers making in our policies worldwide. And second, I have a question for you, Jean-Pierre. I was wondering if your hubs have already their program to make the research, and or you are acting on behalf the request of a government. Thank you.
Thank you, Hakima. Now, as we are behind the schedule, we were late a little bit, so we could be excused. I will ask our panelists for their final words. Please make it brief, 2 sentences, or if you've been asked a specific question, then it could be the third one. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a question from Jan Fischer about politicians to scientists relationships. I was former scientist and former politician. The distinguish between social sciences and natural sciences. Social science can exist everywhere. Natural sciences can be developed these days, to my mind, only in 2 countries around the world, which have privilege, the United States and China. So they're making discoveries, they're making application, they're making business. In that respect, in most of the countries, other countries, science exists only in the universities, which they use their knowledge in teaching young generation. But in whole sense, in sense of science, really from capital S, we have to rely on reality of our world and see that these 2 countries will lead the world for the 21st century. But what to do with the talents in our smaller countries? They have to be united in a certain type of boiling pots for generating wisdom and knowledge. Like Silicon Valley is the best example. All talents around the world going there. Now it's China turns to create their own Silicon Valley. The talents around the world could be going together to brainstorm and make discoveries and receive Nobel Prizes. So this is my answer to, a little bit sharp answer to your question.
Thank you very much. Nigar, you had also a direct question from Jean.
Yeah, thank you so much. Very briefly, this discussion is extremely important, and there are a couple of great ideas, and all of the ideas are extremely important. But one question, I also think that Jan was right, asking about the science, technology, and politicians. And I think that I will not answer to that as the high-level champion, but more as the member of parliament. And even in my speech, I tried to speak about the artificial intelligence, technology, science, and equality. Like, how are we making sure that technologies are reaching the vulnerable groups? How are we making sure that large corporations, some, I don't know, individuals are not making use out of them? Because even during the pandemic, we've seen many cases when businesses were using it for their benefits, to sell products to communities, like, let's be honest. And now, for example, just speaking about a broader sense, about, for example, social media, right? So the social media owners are owning vast majority of information about everyone, individuals. Information is power, right? So how are we handling this kind of issues? It's just a one example, global example. So again, it's all about people at the end of the day. It's all about vulnerable groups, least developed countries, that we make sure that equality is there, that the finance and technology and solutions are fairly distributed among them. And in this sense, the role of politicians is extremely important. The role of members of parliament is important because they are coming up with regulations which are fair for their communities. And how are they bringing incentives for their businesses to flourish, to be able to make this green transition? And yeah, I think, thank you so much for this discussion.
Of course, we can continue on discussing and maybe giving better answers on direct during the coffee break.
Yeah, I'm just sorry that I missed the question. Like regarding Azerbaijan and its readiness, we obviously, all the structures, all the agencies are now making sure that this transition is happening, especially you asked about the supply chains, storage, etc. So our agencies are working on that. Just one comment is that Azerbaijan is taking this green transition extremely important. And the fact that we have taken the COP29 knowing that we have less time than other countries shows our devotion and dedication to this subject.
Thank you. Please,
Petre.
Yeah,
thank you. First, very briefly, coming to the same science issue. Normally, I would say, and repeat, normally, before taking measures combating climate change, we have to understand the complex and the multiple causes of climate change. It's not anymore possible. We are not living in such a normality, obviously. We live in turbulent times, and I said somewhere, uncertainty appears to be the new normality. Let me give you two examples. First, Earth has been absorbing more energy than it emits for decades, as increased concentrations of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere trap more heat from the sun. This imbalance has increased sharply in recent years. Between 1974 and 1993, Earth's average energy imbalance, more heat, more emission, more energy, more heat trapped, was zero. The figure is not important, 0.42 watts per square meter. But between 2004 and 2023, it more than doubled to 0.87. The additional heat is warming ocean waters, making them less effective at capturing CO2 from the air. Now, another example about what effect, what could be the result, the long-term result in economy. Recently, I've seen this research just 2 weeks ago. A group of scientists from Harvard University modeled the impact of a warmer planet. They employed long-term data, as it should be, on global economic growth and average annual temperature, the correlation. They dispose of enough data in order to correlate properly. And they found that an additional 1 Celsius degree of warming, which is the same, 1 degree of temperature of warming, will lead to a 12% fall in global GDP. A climate change scenario with more than 3 degrees of warming would be a collapse, like fighting a permanent war. What is the answer? And I'm sorry to need to say, science is science. The question, science for whom, doesn't make sense. The the use of the results, it's very different. But science is going. But the answer is, and I fully agree with the problem of waste. It's circular economy. And that is a more sophisticated, much more sophisticated model than just treating or having techniques to deal with the waste. No. It is about designing from start every product, knowing what would happen at the end of the life of that project. What that final situation of the project, of the product, when the product is not anymore usable, what that product would be. It would be breakable in components. It would be used for another use. That's the answer. We cannot anymore have an economic model of waste. The new global economy is about to know the value of everything at any time.
Thank you very much, Petre. It's Jean-Pierre to conclude.
Thank you. I will be very brief just to answering the question. Our labs, we work on subjects that are assessed by our scientists, but we also respond to the requests from member states when they have specific issues to work both ways. Very briefly, as a conclusion, I've said about 10 years ago in Brussels, I was invited to tell the EU or give them advice on which direction they should go. And I remember 10 years ago, I told them, I say, it's more than time that EU turns and look to Africa. And they look at me and say, why? I say, because the issues we are going to face, countries in Africa are already facing it, and the knowledge is there, going back to some of the issues. I mean, I would just give one very brief example. How many of you here know, for example, that COVID was sequenced in 48 hours by a research center in Nigeria, led by a gentleman from Cameroon, who passed the sequencing of SARS-CoV-2 to the American CDC. Why? Because they knew what they were looking for, unlike us in the so-called North. And to finish, just one example, something I lived a few years ago, to go back to the question on politicians. We spend a lot of time educating politicians on the techniques, and we spend more time, actually it's more difficult to educate politicians than to educate the people who are effectively using the technique. And a personal experience some years ago, member states were negotiating a resolution in our board of governors, and I was there to advise. And the text of the resolution was going in a technically extremely incorrect direction. And I contacted some of the missions who were there, and I explained, I said, this is incorrect. And they looked at me and they said, well, you don't understand. It's better to agree on something which is technically incorrect than to disagree on something which is correct. So, and my answer was, well, that's why you're a diplomat and I'm a scientist. But in conclusion, for COP29, let's agree on what is the correct decision rather than agree on something which is incorrect, as long as it's possible to do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, I forgot to say very briefly about the relations science-politicians. We've seen so many times, and we continue to see, politicians saying, if the truth doesn't fit into my political strategy, so much the worse for the truth. Okay. Give you an example. A person, I don't refrain from saying it, Donald Trump.
Well, that's the overall rise of populism we are living in, so we should be adapting to it and finding the right responses, I believe. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to all other participants who actually contributed to this a very interesting discussion, and discussion, I would say, with no end. But anyway, I do believe that all the issues we opened, some suggestions we gave, and some warnings as well might be very helpful to Azerbaijani team at the first place, who is leading the negotiations and preparing COP, that some of the things you heard today might be very useful in trying to find the right approach while dealing with negotiations and producing the outcomes of the COP29. Thank you very much to all, and I'm concluding the session. Coffee break is waiting for us, let's say 15 minutes, or Rovshan? Yeah, 15 minutes. Thank you.